The sheriff's warning shot cut through the quiet afternoon like a blade, and in that single sound, every person on Main Street turned to stare at the young widow who'd just stepped off the stagecoach. Rebecca Collins froze where she stood, her boots sinking slightly into the dust of Coyote Ridge. A stranger. A widow. Alone. And now, the whole town knew it. A sudden gust of wind lifted the tail of her black dress as she gripped her single carpetbag. She had traveled miles across the harsh frontier with nothing left except her name and the last bit of hope she carried. Now she was here, in a town where even the sunlight felt wary. Behind her, the stagecoach driver tossed down her bag with no care. The other passengers had gotten off earlier, leaving Rebecca the last soul the stagecoach would deliver today. She stepped forward slowly, feeling the eyes on her. Curtains moved. Doors cracked open. Folks whispered. She needed a room, a safe place for one night. Just one. The Grand Hotel was the closest building that looked like it might offer shelter, but as she entered, the cold-faced clerk barely glanced at her before turning her away. He hadn't even checked the ledger. He saw her dress, saw her ungloved hands, saw the widow's black. "We're full," he said. Every place she went, it was the same story. Every hotel, every boarding house, every empty room suddenly had no vacancy. It wasn't rooms they lacked, it was mercy. Rebecca kept walking until the sun dipped low and the shadows grew long. Her feet ached, dust clung to her dress. She tried the last building on the edge of town, a place with swinging doors and a crooked sign that read, "The Dusty Spur." A saloon, not a place for a woman alone. But she had no choice. Inside, rough men sat over whiskey and cards. Painted girls laughed loudly. The smell of smoke and spilled drink filled the air. When Rebecca stepped inside, silence fell. Every head turned. The giant bartender, Jake, looked her up and down. "You lost, ma'am?" "I need a room," she said, trying to steady her voice. "Just for tonight." Snickers came from the tables. Someone muttered something ugly, but she kept her eyes on Jake. He looked uncomfortable. "This ain't a place for a lady." "I've tried everywhere else," Rebecca said. "I need shelter." Jake scratched his jaw and finally admitted, "Got one room. But it's already paid for by a fella who ain't back till tomorrow." Rebecca straightened. "I can leave before he returns." "There's another problem," Jake added. "That room's only got one bed." The whole saloon waited. She felt the heat rise in her cheeks, but she didn't look away. "That's perfect," Rebecca said. Gasps, whistles, laughter. Someone slapped a table. It didn't matter. She needed a roof. She paid the $2, took the key, and climbed the stairs, with every eye following her. The small room upstairs held nothing but a narrow iron bed, a washstand, and a cracked window overlooking the empty prairie. But to her, it was safety. She sat on the bed, whispering to herself, just one night. Downstairs, Samuel Hayes watched everything. He had been sitting in the corner of the saloon, nursing the same whiskey for almost an hour. A tall, broad-shouldered cowboy with quiet eyes and a past he didn't talk about. A man who knew danger when he saw it. And when he saw the sheriff earlier watching Rebecca with too much interest, he'd felt worry settle heavy in his chest. He knew her type, not weak, not helpless, but a woman carrying the weight of life on her shoulders and refusing to let it break her. When she'd said, "That's perfect," with her chin up and her voice steady, something in him felt a pull he hadn't felt in years. Doris, one of the saloon girls, slid into the chair across from him. "You're staring, Sam." "Just thinking," he said. "About that widow? She's got trouble written all over her." "Not her fault," Samuel replied, eyes on the stairs where she disappeared. She needed a place to sleep. Doris shook her head. "Good men get hurt helping strays, Sam. You of all people should know." He didn't answer, but her words weighed on him. Later that night, when the saloon had quieted and most folks had gone home, Samuel climbed the stairs. He wanted to check on her, make sure she was safe. But halfway down the hallway, a floorboard creaked under his boot. Inside the room, he heard her stop moving. "Who's there?" Rebecca called through the door. He cleared his throat. "Ma'am, it's Samuel Hayes, the man whose room you're using tonight." Silence. Then the door opened just a crack, held by a chain. One green eye stared out at him. "I'm sorry to disturb you," Samuel said softly. "Just wanted to let you know you ain't in any danger. I'll be sleeping in the stable tonight." "You didn't laugh," she said suddenly. "Earlier, when Jake told me about the bed. Everyone else did." "Nothing funny about needing shelter," he said. She studied him for a long moment. A stranger, a quiet man, a safe man. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes." "Samuel," he corrected. Her voice softened. "Good night, Samuel." As he turned to leave, her voice came again. "Does your offer to help include trouble from the sheriff?" Samuel froze. "Especially the sheriff," he said. "If he bothers you, you send for me." Rebecca closed the door gently, her heart pounding. For the first time in months, she felt something like safety. Downstairs, Samuel stepped out into the cool night and made his way to the stable. He bedded down beside his horse, but sleep didn't come easy. All he could think about was the woman upstairs, whispering the same words she'd said in front of the whole saloon. That's perfect. In a town filled with danger, shame, and judgment, her courage shone like fire. Samuel had no idea how much trouble had already begun, and Rebecca had no idea how deeply her life was about to intertwine with the quiet cowboy watching over her. The morning sun crept over Coyote Ridge, soft and golden, but Rebecca felt no warmth as she stepped out of the dusty spur. She had barely walked half a block before she felt it, the weight of every watching eye. Women pulled their children close. Men leaned on hitching posts, smirking and whispering. Overnight, the story of the widow who'd taken a room in the saloon with one bed had spread like wildfire. She kept her chin up, but the judgment burned. "Mrs. Collins!" She froze. Sheriff Watson stepped out from the shadows beside the bank. His cold, gray eyes swept over her like she was something tracked in from the street. His hand rested casually on his gun belt, but the warning in his posture wasn't casual at all. "I hear you caused quite a stir last night," he said. "The dusty spur ain't a place for a respectable woman." "It was the only room available," Rebecca replied calmly. Watson stepped closer, invading her space. "Is that what you think? Because I happen to know there were 2 empty rooms at the Territorial Inn. Mrs. Morrison also had space at her boarding house." She understood instantly. Those doors had been closed on purpose. "Coyote Ridge is a respectable town," Watson went on, circling her slowly like a buzzard. "We have rules, standards. A widow like you should find proper lodgings and proper company." "And if I don't?" Rebecca asked steadily. Watson's smile was thin as paper. "Then accidents happen. Women with no family disappear." He tipped his hat mockingly and walked away, leaving her trembling in the street. Rebecca forced herself to keep walking, but inside fear coiled tight. She went to the post office, only to learn Thomas's cousin had left town months ago. She bought supplies at the general store, enduring whispers and cruel laughter. "That's her," one man said loudly. The widow who said that single bed was perfect. Rebecca escaped onto a side street for a moment of quiet, but stopped short. 3 rough-looking men blocked her path. "Sheriff sent us," one said, "to make you an offer. There's a place outside town where women like you can work." Rebecca's heart thudded. She knew exactly what they meant. "I'm not interested," she said firmly. "Sheriff says you got 2 choices," the man sneered. "Take the offer, or take the consequences." Quote. Before Rebecca could answer, a shadow fell across the alley. Samuel Hayes stood at the entrance, his large frame filling the space like a wall of stone. His voice was calm, but steel threaded through it. "These men bothering you, ma'am?" The 3 men stiffened. "Just talking," the leader muttered. "Didn't look friendly," Samuel replied, stepping inside the alley. "In fact, it looked like 3 cowards cornering a lady." "Not your business, Hayes," one hissed. "I'm making it my business." Rebecca stepped toward him. "Thank you," she whispered. Samuel nodded to her. "Let me walk you back." The men scoffed but didn't follow as Samuel guided her out of the alley and onto the street. "They won't give up," Samuel said quietly. "Watson's got his teeth in something, and you embarrassed him by not acting ashamed." "I don't know what to do," Rebecca admitted. "I have nowhere to go." Samuel stopped walking. "You could work at my ranch." Rebecca blinked. "Your ranch?" "I need a housekeeper. Someone who can cook, keep books, room, board, and wages." He studied her face. "You'd have your own room, a bed to yourself." Despite everything, she almost smiled. "Are you serious?" "I am," he said simply. "Everybody else turned their back on you, but I won't." She thought of the alley, the sheriff, the whispers. Then she thought of the quiet cowboy who had stepped in front of danger for her without hesitation. "When would I start?" she asked softly. "How about right now?" They picked up her carpetbag from the dusty spur and walked toward the edge of town. Rebecca felt eyes on them, but for the first time since arriving, she wasn't afraid. Until she saw Watson leaning against a post, watching. He touched his hat again, voice dripping poison. "Remember, Mrs. Collins, I'm watching." Rebecca held her head high. But inside, something cold settled. Samuel walked her to his wagon. As they climbed aboard, she asked quietly, "Samuel, why help me?" He looked at her with an honesty she hadn't seen in years. "Because I know what it's like not to fit anywhere," he said, "to have folks judge you before you even open your mouth." She swallowed hard. "You were in the war." "Yes, ma'am." "My late husband's brother came home from Shiloh," she whispered. "He looked the same way you do, like he carried the whole battlefield inside him." Samuel didn't answer, but she saw the truth in his eyes. As the wagon rolled out of Coyote Ridge, Rebecca felt fear, exhaustion, and something else. Something she'd thought she lost forever. Hope. The ranch came into view miles later. A small house, a barn, a wide stretch of open land. Nothing fancy, nothing grand. But it felt like a refuge. "It's perfect," she said quietly. Samuel smiled faintly. "That's good to hear." Inside, he showed her a small room with a narrow bed, clean curtains, and a quilt someone had stitched with care. "Your room," Samuel said gently. Her own room. Her own bed. No eyes watching, no sheriff threatening, no whispers. Just a room. A place to breathe. As the sun set, Rebecca cooked dinner, simple beans and cornbread. Samuel ate like it was a feast. Later they sat at the rough wooden table, and she told him about the mine collapse that killed her husband. The lies. The corruption. The eviction. Samuel listened quietly, eyes dark with understanding. "That shouldn't have happened," he said. "No," Rebecca whispered, "but it did." When they cleaned up, she found a leather folder hidden beneath a loose board in her room. Inside were papers, land deeds, maps, letters. Rebecca and Samuel spread them across the table. The truth hit like thunder. Sheriff Watson was stealing land. For a railroad line. Using threats, fires, poisoned wells, whatever it took. Samuel pointed to one document. "This name, Holloway. Wasn't he your husband's mine owner?" "Yes," Rebecca whispered, voice trembling. "He let Thomas die." Their eyes met across the lamplight. Two people whose lives had been torn open by the same group of powerful men. "Rebecca," Samuel said softly, "he just uncovered something dangerous." "I know. You don't have to stay. I can get you to another town." "And let them keep hurting people?" "No," she said, fire rising in her voice. "I won't run again." Samuel's hand closed over hers, warm, steady, strong. "You won't be alone," he said. They sat together long into the night, planning carefully. Outside, coyotes howled across the prairie. Inside, two determined souls began a quiet war. A war that would change everything. The town hall filled before sunrise. Word had spread through Coyote Ridge that justice was finally coming, and folks who once hid behind shut curtains, now stood shoulder to shoulder, faces hard with anger and hope. Rebecca sat near the front beside Samuel, her hands steady, her heart stronger than it had ever been. Judge Thorne called the hearing to order. A federal marshal stood watch. Sheriff Watson sat at a table with a slick Denver lawyer, wrapped hand bandaged from the warning shot Samuel had fired. His eyes darted through the crowd like a trapped animal. Watson wasn't used to being challenged. Today, the whole town had shown up to do exactly that. One by one, the victims spoke. Martha Henderson stood tall as she told of her well being poisoned. Pete Clearary's voice shook when he described finding his cattle dead. Every family forced from their lands stepped forward to tell what Watson had done. By the time Doris entered, the crowd fell into complete silence. Gone were the bright colors and painted face. She wore a simple gray dress, hair pinned neat. For the first time in years, she looked like the woman she once had been before sorrow drove her into the shadows of the dusty spur. "State your name," the prosecutor said. "Doris McKenna." "And your occupation?" "I've worked at the Dusty Spur Saloon for 15 years. She held up a notebook, pages worn, edges frayed. "These are records I kept, dates, conversations, names, payments, all tied to Sheriff Watson and James Holloway." Gasps filled the room. Watson shot to his feet. "She's nothing but a saloon girl. Her word means nothing." "Sit down, Sheriff," Judge Thorne snapped. Doris went on slowly, carefully. "On March 15th, I heard Watson order men to poison the Henderson well. On April 2nd, he paid men to spread disease among Clearary's herd. And more, so much more." The room erupted. Then Rebecca stepped forward with the final folder, the one she had found under the loose board. "These documents show a pattern," she said. "Every family forced from their land lived along the future railroad line." She lifted a letter. "And this one is from Holloway himself ordering Sheriff Watson to use whatever means necessary." The crowd roared, furious. But before the marshal could move to restrain Watson, the doors burst open. James Holloway stepped inside with 2 expensive lawyers. He smoothed his fine coat and smiled coldly. "This is nonsense," he announced. "Accusations built on lies and forged documents. I am a businessman. I operate legally." Rebecca walked straight to him. "You killed my husband," she said quietly. "Maybe not with your hands, but with your greed." Holloway's jaw twitched. Mine was safe. Accidents happen." "Then why did you burn the Grafton spread?" she shot back. "Why did your men terrorize families? Why did you hide these letters?" She held up the Pinkerton report they'd recovered from the ashes. Holloway paled. The prosecutor stepped forward. "James Holloway, you are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, arson, and murder." The crowd exploded with cheers. Watson lunged suddenly, pulling a hidden pistol. He fired wildly, aiming straight for Rebecca. "Reeb!" Samuel moved before anyone else could. He shoved Rebecca aside and took the bullet across his arm. The marshal tackled Watson, forcing the pistol away. Rebecca dropped to her knees beside Samuel. "Samuel! Samuel, look at me!" He winced but managed a grin. "Just a graze, Rebecca. Still here." Tears filled her eyes, but she couldn't stop smiling. It was over. Truly over. Watson and Holloway were dragged out of the hall in chains, the crowd clearing a path only to close ranks behind them, cheering, crying, holding one another. Families reclaimed their hope. Justice had finally come. After the hearing, the town gathered outside. For the first time since her arrival, people approached Rebecca not with suspicion, but gratitude. "You saved us," Martha said, squeezing her hands. "We saved each other," Rebecca corrected. Judge Thorne joined them, his bandaged head held high. "Territory officials will take it from here. This town owes you both a debt it can never repay." Rebecca looked at Samuel, who stood tall despite his wounded arm. "We didn't do this alone," she said. The people of Coyote Ridge had stood up, together. That afternoon, after the crowd settled, Samuel led Rebecca outside behind the courthouse. The wind was gentle, the sky warm, the danger gone. He held her hand, thumb brushing her knuckles. "Rebecca," he began, voice low and steady, "these past months, you've turned my ranch from a lonely place into a home. You've fought beside me. You've changed me." She met his eyes. "You changed me, too." He swallowed hard. "I want a future with you, a real one, not out of need or fear, but because I love you." Her breath caught. "I want you as my wife," Samuel said softly. "Will you stay, not as my housekeeper, not because you need shelter, but because you choose me?" Rebecca placed her hand against his cheek. "Samuel Hayes, after everything we've faced, after the danger, the fear, the hope," she smiled, the same brave smile she'd worn the night she walked into the dusty spur. "That's perfect." He laughed, relieved and full of love, and pulled her into his arms. Months passed. Coyote Ridge bloomed. Families rebuilt their farms. New businesses opened. The railroad changed everything, but this time for the better, under honest hands. Rebecca and Samuel married in a packed church, surrounded by the very people who once judged her. Doris wore a proper dress and cried happy tears. Judge Thorne walked Rebecca down the aisle. The Hendersons in Clear Aries cheered loudest of all. Rebecca didn't walk down the aisle as the widow who took a scandalous room at the dusty spur. She walked as the woman who changed a town. And in the quiet nights that followed, she and Samuel lay together in a bed larger than the one that started it all, building a life filled with the very thing she once thought she'd lost forever. Safety. Purpose. Love. Her new home, her new family, her new beginning. All because she'd stood tall when the world tried to shame her. And when the dusty spur offered her only one bed, she had answered with courage that changed everything.